What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 5 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2024 CFL season and postseason. And in case you haven't noticed, you boys posted a lot of content lately, so I have a give back for you. For a multitude of reasons, this week's episode is going to be lightning round. Pew, 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 pew. And what I mean by that is, it's probably not going to be 25 minutes. Myriad of reasons for that. Obviously, this show is late. It's being recorded early Wednesday morning. It's not going to be out to you guys until late Wednesday morning or early Wednesday afternoon. The show's going to be late. It ran long last week. I was well over 30 minutes last week, which I don't tend to like to do. And I've posted like 3.5 hours of movie awards content since I did the last episode of this show. So I'm going to give y'all a bit of a break, and we're going to go through this fairly quickly. Week 5, second straight 7-5 week for the picks overall. 3-1 straight up and 3-1 against the spread. So I pulled my straight up record to 10-6 on the season, which is moving in the right direction. I was only 1-3 on the totals, and what that means is the betting picks are both 7-9. 7-9 against the spread and 7-9 on the totals. But again, we're moving in the right direction, I feel. So 7-5 overall, that pulls my record even money, 24-24. CFL Fantasy had another fairly strong week, 102.8 points in week 4. That was just outside the top 1,000 across the full game and just inside the top 150 in Derek Taylor's league. For the season, I'm at 397.8, which is good for just outside the top 2,500 and just outside the top 325 overall and in DT's league, respectively. My most outstanding player from last week is Tyson Philpott. He put up a 20-burger, and had I made him my captain, obviously it would have been a better week, but he put up 20 points. He was my top performer. Most of the people in my roster last week hit double digits, which was really good. But yeah, Tyson Philpott was the standout with 20 points. Week 5 slate of games looks like this. The Toronto Argos are in Saskatchewan taking on the Riders, who are coming into this game off of their bye. The REDBLACKS are in Winnipeg taking on the Bombers, where the Bombers are still looking for their first win of the season. Calgary is in Montreal to take on the Alouettes, and the BC Lions travel to Hamilton to take on the Ticats. Only have 2 unbeatens left in the CFL to this point in the season. That's the Alouettes and the Riders, which I think surprised a lot of people. They're both in tough this week for, a variety of reasons, which we'll kind of get into. Winnipeg, this might be their best spot this season to get in and get their first win. I realize they've already played Ottawa once, but that game was in Ottawa. Now it flips over to Winnipeg. And we do have a game that could very well be heavily impacted by the weather, and that is Calgary and Montreal. So as I said, lightning round through this thing. Toronto and Saskatchewan. The Riders are 3.5-point dogs coming into this game. Total in the game is 48 points. No Sean Bain and no Trevor Harris for Saskatchewan. Harris has been put on the 6-game injured list. It's Shea Patterson moving forward for the Riders under center. And I need to see a lot more. I do not have faith in this as it stands right now. Shea Patterson has attempted 16 passes in 3 seasons. I'm not necessarily, I'm not criticizing him for that. He's the backup quarterback. But where you're going to have to be the starter now for a long stretch of games, we saw this last year with Mason Fine. It sometimes takes a while to kind of get into the swing of things. And he's facing a good matchup here in terms of a fairly soft defense to be able to do some things. Like, Toronto's defensive efficiency has cratered since the beginning of the season. They are very, very beatable right now, but without Trevor Harris, I think it's a tall order. Something else that's interesting as I was digging through this game, these two teams have polar opposite reactions to playing in the month of July. It's really interesting. Toronto 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games in July. That basically goes back to last season and I think a little bit beyond. The Riders in their last 7 games in the month of July, 0-6-1 against the spread. Obviously, the Riders come into this game with the rest advantage, but again, I really need to see it from Shea Patterson, and I think against one of the league's better teams, even though Toronto, I think, is kind of sliding a little bit, against one of the league's better teams, I just don't see it going super well. So we're going to go with the Argos in this one. We're on Toronto in Saskatchewan to beat the Riders. 3.5 points seems like a pretty beatable number here. I'm going to lay that minus 3.5 on the Argos. So Toronto minus the 3.5 points on the road. Total in the game set at 48. And again, when I don't know what I'm going to get offensively from one side, not just because of the quarterback, but I mean, you're going to be without one of your biggest weapons in the receiving game as well. I have to go under on this number. So we're going to go under 48 points in Toronto, Saskatchewan. Let's go like 28-13 in favor of the Argos. Argos win. Argos cover. Give me the under on the points. Ottawa in Winnipeg now, and obviously all eyes are going to be on that Winnipeg injury report. Zach Collaros dealing with a thorax injury, a chest injury that obviously kept him out of the whole second half of that game last week. And oh boy, like, you let Drew Brown go because you were fairly confident that you were going to be able to get Chris Streveler back in. Man, did Chris Streveler not look good to me. That's, like, I mean, the injury bug has been terrible to Winnipeg this year, but man, if Collaros has to miss extended time, from what I saw from Streveler, I don't love it. The Bombers have not won, covered, or gone over at any point this season, so they're 0-4, 0-4, and 4-0 to the under, which is good. It's good for the under bettors, but has not been a lot of points to go around in Blue Bombers games. One thing that is going in Winnipeg's direction, and I think will certainly help them out here, their defensive efficiency since the last time I measured it has gone from 13.9 to 15.4. What does that represent? It's a whole yard and a half further that an offense has to go to score points on that Winnipeg defense, and it represents going from 8th in the CFL to 4th in the CFL. So they have definitely climbed up the defensive efficiency rankings. So if they're starting to do some good things, it's probably on the defensive side of the ball. Also worth pointing out, the REDBLACKS 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 road games. And in this head-to-head matchup, they're only 1-5 to the over in the last 6, these two teams. So not a lot of points to be had here in this head-to-head matchup. I think that holds true this time around as well. You have to go with the Bombers here. Now, Ottawa's on a bit of a rest advantage because Winnipeg has not had a bye yet, and I'm going to start paying attention to that as we get deeper into the season, because now we're at the point where, like, game 5 in a row, game 6 in a row, in a league where you have 3 byes, your body's going to start to feel that, like, hey, we're owed a bye week here soon. So you got to start feeling that, I would imagine, as an athlete in the CFL. Worth pointing out, Ottawa had that bye in week 1. Winnipeg has not had their bye yet. But I still feel good about the Bombers here, and we're getting a great number for a Bombers game in Winnipeg. We're getting minus 2.5 here on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I think you got to go ahead, take the Bombers, and lay that minus 2.5. Small price to pay. Let's take that. Total in the game set at 47 points. I'm going to stick under on this one as well. It's the way that head-to-head matchup is trending. So let's go under the 47-point total. We're going to go like 26-17, something like that. I think this is still a competitive football game. Still a 2-possession, but a fairly close 2-possession. So 26-17 Winnipeg. Take the Bombers to win. Lay the minus 2.5 and give me the under on the points. Calgary and Montreal, and like I mentioned, close to the top of the show. We're expecting rain in Montreal, and I think we're expecting quite a lot of rain in Montreal. So I think that's really going to have an impact on this football game. Both of these teams come into the game relatively healthy. Once again, worth pointing out, the Alouettes have not had a bye week yet this season. Calgary has, so a little bit of a rest advantage there to the Stampeders. I would say if this isn't the 2 best teams in the league, which I can understand if people don't believe that it is, these arguably might have been the 2 most consistent teams so far in the CFL in 2024. Calgary, especially on the defensive side, has really risen to the occasion here. Their run defense, that's still a problem, but the secondary, I think, has been very, very good. And as a matter of fact, if you're measuring by my defensive efficiency statistic, this is a matchup of the 2 most efficient defenses in the CFL so far this season. Montreal at 19.3, Calgary at 16.4. Number 1 versus number 2. The Stampeders have not had much luck in this matchup historically. The last 16 head-to-head matchups between Calgary and Montreal, the Stamps are only 3-13 against the spread. In saying that, the Alouettes are laying an obnoxious amount of points in this game. Montreal is minus 9.5 in this game against Calgary, which for the two most efficient defenses in the league, I just don't understand, especially where you could argue that a team has a bit of a rest advantage by one team not having had a bye week yet. 9.5 points is way too much for me in this matchup. I still feel good about Montreal winning a low-scoring, super competitive matchup. I think they're the better team, top to bottom, but 9.5 points is way too many for me in this matchup. I like Montreal to win. Give me the plus 9.5 here on the Calgary Stampeders. I hedged my bets with them last week, and it paid off. We're going to do it again with 6 extra points on the spread. Total in this game set at 50.5 points for a game that's going to be impacted by the weather and the two most efficient defenses in the league. Way, way under on this number. I don't think this gets out of the 30s, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to go like 20-13 for Montreal. So Montreal wins, Calgary covers that plus 9.5, and give me a way under on the points. And the final matchup is the BC Lions in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. Interesting, neither one of these teams have had a bye week yet, so no rest advantage on either side. And from an offensive efficiency perspective, and this is where this statistic is going to sound stupid to everybody. Obviously, these two offenses are not the same. They're not. BC is far more prolific in terms of scoring, total offense, basically everything across the board. But if you look at an efficiency perspective, these offenses are identical. It takes them 16.6 yards so far this season to put a point on the board. So from an efficiency perspective, they're identical, but obviously we know which team has the better offense. In general, we just know which team is better, which is the BC Lions. And I think Hamilton has like one card in their arsenal that could put this game in jeopardy, and that's the pass rush. Hamilton has had a lot of success this season rushing the passer, 9 quarterback sacks, which I believe is tied for the league lead as a team. But I mean, if they can't put pressure on Vernon Adams, I think he's going to chew them up. I mean, this Hamilton defense is the worst scoring defense in the CFL, giving up over 31 points a game. Vernon Adams leading the league in passing. This is one of the most prolific offenses in the CFL. This could really get away if Hamilton can't rush the passer. And the Lions offensive line, since week 1, where they really kind of collapsed, have played really, really good football. I think they've only given up 1 sack since. If you'll recall, I changed the pick that I made last week. I took Hamilton originally, changed it on the news that James Butler wasn't going to be playing last week, and Hamilton, once again, came oh so close, and then I wound up, being correct on that, where Ottawa won the game on the last second field goal from Lewis Ward, and that just underscores that you can't trust this Ticats team. You just can't. You just can't trust them at this point. They're going to win some games, but there's something rotten in the stew. And I'm not smart enough to figure out specifically what that is. I assume it's up here, but yeah, I mean, you can't go with the Ticats in this game. BC all the way in this one, and Hamilton's taking +5 here as a home dog. That's still not tasty enough against the spread to not lay those points on the Lions. The Lions are not an incredible football team right now. From an offensive and defensive efficiency perspective, they're like dead middle of the pack. Like, this is not a great football team, but it is a prolific football team. And I think that's really all you're going to need in a matchup against Hamilton, whose defense has struggled so much. So give me the Lions. I'm going to lay the -5 on the BC Lions, and I'm going to take the over in this. It's the biggest number of the week at 53.5 points. I think this gets into the high 50s. A lot of that propelled by the BC Lions on the offensive side. Give me over 53.5 points in BC Hamilton. I'm going to go like 38-20. Something like that. Like, I think Hamilton gets their garbage time points. I think this game is like a blowout through the first 3 quarters, if I'm being perfectly honest. 38-20 for the Lions. Lions win. Lions cover -5 over on the point total. And now, my CFL fantasy roster for week 5 is right in front of your eyes right now. And I really wanted to take Cody Fajardo this week because I think the Stamps defense can be got, at least in terms of like yardage. But with rain in the forecast, I just can't do it. And it's too tasty to grab Vernon Adams there at 14.5K. Kadeem Carey was the very first person that I slid into my lineup this week, just because I think Toronto's going to get out to a lead in that game, and I think it's going to be the Kadeem Carey show, especially for the second half. I'm going to grab Walter Fletcher because if there's definitely a spot that the Stamps defense can be got, it's in the run defense. I think they're still giving up over 100 yards a game. So Walter Fletcher at 9.1K, I think is valuable. My wide receivers, I'm going with Team Justin Hardy, and Justin McInnis. Hardy at 10.9K, McInnis at 9K. I really wanted to get Alexander Hollins into the lineup, but he was just a little too expensive, though I do still have a couple $1,000s to play with, so if I have to swap some stuff around, I may still be able to get him in. And I'm going to stick with Shamar Bridges in the flex. He paid off for me last week finding the end zone, and if you're going to keep giving him to me at $4,500, I'm going to keep taking him, thank you very much. And we're also going to ride with the Argos on the defensive side here. Again, going up against Shea Patterson, not a seasoned quarterback, passing quarterback anyway, at the CFL level. So we're going to grab the Argos defense and see if they can feast. There you go, folks. Lightning round edition of the CFL Pick Show for Week 5. Once again, the picks. I got the Toronto Argos beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders 28-13, taking the -3.5 on Toronto, under 48 points. Ottawa and Winnipeg, I've got the Bombers winning that game 26-17, laying the -2.5 on the hometown Bombers, under the 47-point total. I got the Montreal Alouettes beating the Calgary Stampeders 20-13 in a rain and weather impacted game. I'm taking the Stamps to cover +9.5 points, under on the 50.5-point total. And the BC Lions beating the Hamilton Ticats 38-20 in Hamilton, taking the -5 on BC and over 53.5 points. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again for taking the time to watch the show here in Week 5. I hope you've enjoyed the third Justin and Tyler Mid-Year Movie Awards, which are now posted and completed. Just posted the final part late last night, so that is available for you to check out as well. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you for the awards again in January, and we'll see you right back here next week, where the show will be back to looking like normal. We'll see you again in Week 6. I almost forgot to do my outro. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. See you in Week 6.